Okay, Adi, I keep seeing this thing SPQR on old Roman buildings and even on manhole covers in Rome. What does it actually mean? And why do people still care about it?
Great question. SPQR stands for Senatus Populusque Romanus, which means the Senate and people of Rome. But here's the wild part. It wasn't just a slogan. In Cicero's day, it summed up Rome's entire political system, a mix of elite senators, elected officials, and the voice of the people. Imagine a government that's part aristocracy, part democracy, and somehow it all worked. Good idea and kind of.
Wait, so it wasn't just the Senate running things? The people actually had a say?
Sort of. Rome had this elaborate setup. There was the Senate, basically a club of super rich, powerful families. But there were also popular assemblies where citizens could vote, and a bunch of elected magistrates who ran everything from the courts to the army. It was complicated, but the idea was that both the Senate and the people mattered, at least on paper.
So, how did someone actually get power in Rome? Was it all about being born into the right family?
Mostly, yeah. If you were a patrician, a member of the old aristocratic families, you had a huge head start. But there was this thing called the cursus honorum, which was like a ladder of political offices. You'd start with military or legal service, then try to get elected as a quaestor, which gave you some real authority and a taste of power.
And after quaestor, what came next?
You could go for tribune of the plebs if you were a plebeian. That was a big deal because tribunes could veto laws and protect ordinary citizens. They were supposed to be champions of the people, but honestly, a lot of them just used the job to climb higher.
So, not exactly people's heroes, huh?
Not usually. Then there were aediles who had to pay for public games and fix the streets out of their own pocket. It was basically a way to show off your wealth and win popularity.
That sounds expensive. Why would anyone want that?
Because if you played your cards right, you could become a praetor. That gave you imperium, the power to command armies and enforce laws. You'd get lictors following you around with these bundles of rods called fasces, which symbolized your authority. And if you did well, you might get a cushy provincial governorship where you could make a fortune.
Wait, so they spent a ton of money to get elected, then made it back by running a province?
Exactly. Sometimes honestly, but often through, let's say, creative accounting. The ultimate prize was becoming one of the 2 consuls, the top job. You'd run the army, preside over the Senate, and basically be the face of Rome for a year.
But you said the people had a say. How did that actually work?
Rome had 3 main assemblies. The Comitia Centuriata, where the rich had more voting power, the Comitia Tributa, which was based on tribes, and the Concilium Plebis, just for plebeians. They could pass laws and elect certain officials, but the system was rigged so the wealthy and powerful always had the upper hand.
So, it was kind of democratic, but not really.
Exactly. It looked like a republic. But in reality, a small group of families controlled almost everything. The Senate was supposed to be just an advisory body, but their advice basically became law over time. And within the Senate, there was an even smaller group, the nobles, who had a lock on the top jobs. For 300 years, only 15 non-nobles became consul.
That's wild. So much for equal opportunity.
Right? And even when someone like Cicero, a so-called new man, made it to the top, he was still seen as an outsider. There was a huge gap between the senators, the equestrians, the rich but less political class, and the plebs, who made up most of the population and lived pretty tough lives.
This is reminding me a lot of modern politics. Like, we talk about democracy, but there's always some elite group pulling the strings.
Exactly. Think about how campaign finance works today, or how certain families or networks seem to dominate politics. The Roman system was supposed to balance elite control and popular input, but in practice, the rich and powerful kept most of the real power. Sound familiar?
Totally. And even now, people argue about whether our systems are really democratic or just pretending to be.
That's why SPQR still matters. It's a reminder that even the most famous republics can be run by a tiny elite, while the majority get left out. Understanding how Rome balanced or failed to balance power between the elite and the people helps us see the cracks in our own systems.
So, SPQR wasn't just a fancy slogan, it was a promise that Rome never really kept. A government for both the Senate and the people, but mostly for the Senate.
Exactly. And that's why it's still relevant. Every time we debate who really holds power, whether it's politicians, billionaires, or ordinary voters, we're echoing the same struggles Rome faced 2,000 years ago. History doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme.
Makes you wonder how much has really changed. Next time I see SPQR, I'll remember it's not just ancient history, it's a warning.
And that's the lesson. If we want real democracy, we have to keep asking who's actually in charge and who's being left out. Rome's story is a reminder not to take those answers for granted.
That's it for today's episode on Fun Learn Talks, where stories from business, technology, and history keep your curiosity alive. If you enjoyed the journey, make sure to follow, rate, or share it with a fellow curious mind. And hey, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment or connect with us online. I'm Anu, and I'll catch you next time, right here on Fun Learn Talks. Until then, keep learning, keep wondering.